Bristol is a hotbed of creativity.
Midlanders generally are kind of known for being quite friendly and bubbly and personable.
It's Manchester, we do things differently here.
Whisky, golf, shortbread, these are global brands which people directly associate with Scotland.
From shipbuilding, coal mining, all of the sort of industrial revolution, it's very much been a hotbed. And I think in the 21st century, you are getting that equally, but in a completely different world, in the world of technology. There's a huge digital cluster.
I think one of the things about Liverpool is it's a talking city, it's a communicating city, and actually people in Liverpool have always looked towards the media and those who they speak to.
Media City changed the landscape in terms of production.
ITV is producing hours, hundreds of hours worth of content, and that all turns people's heads so that they think, oh right, okay, we can see all this happening in the north, that brings more people in.
World-class talent right up here in this little corner of the country, you don't have to go anywhere else.
There's really been a big kind of push from the powers that be to kind of promote business startups.
You can see how a northern city like Manchester can play on, in a global marketplace as well as in the UK.
The world's longest running drama started here, and other things have grown up around it at the same time.
It's a place that very quietly produces world-class creative work. It kind of told me that there was room here to do something really interesting and really different.
I think the diversity here is second to none.
It's become a global city with a local heart. It's starting to become more of a natural choice.
There doesn't seem to be any limits. We can bring anything to the table. It'll be heard, and if there's a way, by hook or by crook, we'll make it happen.
One day you can be working with a multinational global brand, the next day you can be working with a small business who's maybe trying television for the first time. So it's that diversity that keeps me interested.
Every single aspect of Liverpool's success has been reflected by Radio City, because it's a great example of how to do things and how to do things right.
Just because something hasn't been built doesn't mean it can't be. Once that belief starts to come across, then we can all build bridges rather than split off by economic regions or geographic regions. And I think it's those bridges that will then really help Great Britain coalesce into one space.
Well, good morning everybody, and welcome back to the second half of LEAD 2018. My name's Siobhan Kenny, and I'm the Chief Executive of Radio Centre, representing all commercial radio in the United Kingdom. So I'm really pleased and proud to be leading this stream of work for the Advertising Association on how advertising can contribute to increase productivity and growth across the whole of the UK. So I suppose from what we've heard this morning, you'll be delighted to know that we're in a kind of Brexit-free zone for this area, which I don't know about you, but that sort of cheers me up a little bit. Ironically, this stream of work did come from the work we did on after the vote, and there were the two sides to that equation. The first was, London, Britain as a global hub for creativity. And the second one was this, in that, okay, there's all this other stuff going on outside, things that all the uncertainty we've been talking about this morning. But what are the areas in which we might, in fact, be able to have more control over that? And also, wouldn't that be really exciting? So I don't know about you, but I saw this film for the first time yesterday, and I think there were two messages I took from it. I will hasten to add, we did see quite a lot of Bauer media, and that really wasn't me making sure that radio is part of this film, but obviously I'm very delighted that it is, since radio's had a couple of bumper years, and we're looking forward to seeing how this project could contribute to making that even better. So the first thing that jumped out at me is 57% of the advertising workforce is based outside London. Now, if I'd had to make that assessment beforehand, I don't know if I would have put such a big number on it. So that, I think, is a powerful message for all of us in this room. Second was, there's a lot of hotbeds out there, aren't there? They were all hotbeds of something or other, which is great. But there was something that final speaker said at the end, which I think talks to a lot of the stuff we've been talking about this morning, when he said, it's easy to split apart into regions, into nations, into cities, communities, towns. But the one thing that we really have going for us in the UK is this amazing creativity. It's amazing. We stand out in the world, and it's clear that that's buzzing up and down the country as well. So if we use that to build bridges and to coalesce, he said something about the UK coalescing into one space. And that's something that I think we can really explore with what we're going to talk about this morning. So the piece of work was about looking at small and medium-sized businesses. Now, as long as I can remember, which is quite a long time, all governments have been talking about it's really important that we actually boost this sector. It's key to the British economy. And yet, we still seem to be saying that, you know, there's more that could be done. So what are the questions that we started off asking ourselves, which we're going to be exploring this morning, are what could the advertising industry do to boost productivity and growth? You know, we're going to look at some of the research that we've got, but, you know, roughly 6 out of 10 small businesses do not advertise. They don't spend any money on advertising or marketing. So I think that's a pretty big number. So what could we do to actually persuade some of those people that if they invested a bit in this area, that could actually give a rocket boost to their business? So I think that's a very important area for us to look at. If we can manage to make that happen, isn't that something the government should be quite interested in? Is there a way we can look at what happened with the British film industry when the government decided to give tax breaks to the British film industry and see whether we couldn't boost small and medium-sized businesses across the whole country in a similar way? And I don't know, if I was the Chancellor of the Exchequer, I would find that quite an interesting prospect at present, and also something that allows us to talk ourselves into a different place from talking ourselves into being gloomy about Brexit. So we're going to be looking at that in our panel later on. We've got some excellent panellists who are going to be talking a little bit before we actually sit down together. But of course, because this is a lead conference, obviously you have to participate as well. That's absolutely necessary. So if you would get your fingers on buzzers and your apps out, we're going to ask you the following question. Is the ad industry doing enough to encourage wider economic growth across the UK? So you've got 3 possibilities there. I think I would sum them up as yes, no, and can give a monkeys. But let's see where you are on that. Are you anywhere? No, good, okay. Well, thank God we're doing this work stream, and it's obviously very necessary. Because if you'd all said yes, that would be a bit of a problem for the next half hour or so. Anyway, so first off, I'd like to introduce to the stage somebody who probably doesn't need any introduction, especially not to this audience. Andy Street is the newly elected and first mayor, indeed, of the West Midlands. Just under a year now, just hotly fought contest, which we all followed with interest last year. And I think it's fair to say that since he's taken that role, we've all heard quite a lot more about the West Midlands than we had in the past. Andy, of course, was managing director of one of the best-loved brands in Great Britain, in the form of John Lewis. And he's showing that he's bringing all the passion and enthusiasm to his new role in the West Midlands that he did to that amazing brand. Andy came to talk to a Radio Centre conference in Birmingham a little while ago, where he reveals that actually his first ambition was in fact to be a radio DJ. And he wasn't just saying that because he knew absolutely everything about radio and how it works and everything else. So I think we could say that radio's loss is everyone else's gain, and I'd like to invite to the stage Andy Street.
So good morning, everybody, and thank you, Siobhan. Promise for the next few minutes, no gloom. I'm going to tell you that the regions are going to play a critical role in the post-Brexit economy. So the way we're going to do it, have a little look at what's going on in the West Midlands in terms of context, where we've come from, and then look at why it is our time to lead. Birmingham and the West Midlands knows how to lead the world. This is a factory in the 18th century, biggest factory in the world for 20 years in the northwest of Birmingham in Handsworth. We led the world again in the second industrial revolution. Mass manufacture. This is the inside of the Henry Roots car factory in Coventry. Many similar scenes around the West Midlands. And the question is, can we lead again? you'll all be converts in 10 minutes' time. But the truth is that from that success, back in the 60s and 70s, we had a torrid 40 years. Could have chosen many graphs to show our relative decline. This one just shows employment in Birmingham against the rest of the country. And look at how those jaws open up. This was deindustrialisation across the West Midlands, and it's what left us with some of the biggest social problems in the country. But from that laggard position, we've moved to be the economic leader. I've chosen just 2 graphs. I could have chosen many more. Top for exports, top for inward investment, top for growth of startups. This one, though, focuses on productivity, that elusive word, us against the rest of the country for the last 3 years, growing nearly 3 times as fast, top performing region. And startups, the lifeblood of the economy, Birmingham against the 2 nearest equivalent cities. That's 2016's number. 2017 is in the press this Sunday, and all Brummies will enjoy the numbers again. So how have we done it? No point just wallowing in it. The question is how. My answer is that we've pursued across the region, led by the local enterprise partnerships, what I call a mini industrial strategy. We did that before it was fashionable with government, concentrating on the high growth sectors of the future. And boring map, but we've got our act together, playing as a team when we used to just squabble against one another. So do a deal with government, give them confidence that we are working as a team. And at the back of that, we did our first devolution deal with central government, and actually that gave us significant sums, unprecedented sums of money to invest in our infrastructure to drive the economy forward. And a second deal was done with the Chancellor just before last Christmas, and we move on with further infrastructure in transport. The images are from Dudley and Wolverhampton, not necessarily the hottest places historically in the West Midlands, but demonstrating the point we're investing across the region. So, if that's what's been going on, let's look forward and give confidence that it is now genuinely our time. So we've had 2 mega wins just before Christmas. The West Midlands never won competitions for hosting international sporting events. We tried for the Olympics in 1992, we tried to host the Wembley Stadium, got nowhere. We've never won a cultural competition. But the Commonwealth Games is coming to Birmingham in 2022, £1 billion of investment, and Coventry is to be the City of Culture in 2021. And we all know the transformative effect of that. So that's 2 big wins, and that's given us huge pride and confidence. And the local paper described it in this way: we win ... again. And for a region that had had 40 years of underperformance, for us to begin to believe in ourselves in that way is a critical change of attitude. The hard stuff, the regional economic plan. It falls to the combined authority to draw the economic plan for the region. And I know it's a slightly complicated slide, but the point is very simple. We have chosen across the top of the slide to concentrate on the high-tech, transformative sectors that produce high-value jobs going forward that are sustainable, supported by the mass employment enabling sectors, as we talk of. But the magical ingredient is the digital transformation. Each one of those sectors, whether it be engineering, life sciences, construction, logistics, is all in its own right becoming a digital sector. So our responsibility is to become the digital leader, not just of Britain. We've got to look globally and compete with Boston and Barcelona and others. And of course, I know a little bit about this in terms of how digital changed retail. And I like to think the experience in John Erskine responding to digital, now an online-led business, is exactly the same for these traditional and advanced economic sectors. And the good news is, and you probably don't know this, if you look at the digital strength, number of digital and tech businesses across the country, there's the ranking. 60% more in the West Midlands than in a certain place in the north that I'm not allowed to mention. 60% more, only one place leading. And that gives us real confidence as we look at the area, the practical areas we can lead. Manufacturing, of course, this is a brand new aerospace factory in Coventry. And of course, we have Britain's best and internationally leading car company, Jaguar Land Rover, in the West Midlands as well. And thinking of the digitisation of manufacturing, think of electric vehicles, and think of that ghastly picture of me in an autonomous vehicle. Remember, the Chancellor and the Prime Minister wouldn't go in one. They will be in one eventually, because this is the future of auto manufacturing. And those are digital industries of the future, based in the West Midlands, nowhere else. And if we think about health, this is in a new facility just opened in Birmingham University, where we're actually thinking about medical devices and actually drug trials in the West Midlands. And the interesting thing about why companies are now pouring billions of pounds into drug trials in the West Midlands is we have the population of Scotland, but the diversity of the world. And if you want to do a drug trial on all genome types, you do it in the West Midlands, a brilliant new industry. And this is the new HSBC bank headquarters, retail bank headquarters. That will open in central Birmingham in May of this year. When has a bank had its headquarters elsewhere than London? But they will open in Birmingham, a brand new standard for us. 2,200 jobs relocated from there. And then, of course, there's HS2. We don't just think of that as a railway. We think of that as a new high-speed industry based in the West Midlands. The image on the right is the terminal station that will be built in central Birmingham for open in 2026. The image on the left is from the high-speed college. So we have the construction headquarters, the college, the marshalling yards, the signalling yards. It is a new digital business based in the West Midlands. And we all know the visitor economy is critical for any economic resurgence. Lots of attractions from Symphony Hall to the Black Country Museum, and our visitor numbers, international numbers, up by 40% in just 5 years. Easily the fastest growing number of any region. And then we come to creative. Not talked about a lot, but BBC 3, the digital channel, and I know there's some from BBC who are here today, will be opening based in Birmingham, relocating to Birmingham this year. Bottom half of the slide is all about our wooing of Channel 4. You all know the debate, we're better to come than the youngest, most diverse place in Britain. And then to the creative talent that we have, the Birmingham Royal Ballet, and of course, choosing just one of Birmingham's great TV exports, the Peaky Blinders obsession as it has become. So they're the economic strengths. If we just look at the housing market, the property market, what's happening? Fastest increase in house prices anywhere in the country last year. The Birmingham 16 postcode house prices moving rapidly when we see stagnation in London. And this slide I love, because this shows the amount of office space being generated in Birmingham at the moment. Most cities, the graph would have had a peak in 07, the boom years. Look at that, almost twice the pace of development that we saw in the last boom. So the story is very clear, that after years of relative underperformance, in all sorts of ways, the West Midlands economy is bouncing back and taking that leadership position. But as the slide says, it's not just about the economy. You might say, Bill Clinton, read my lips. It is also about the sharing of success. So, Ernst & Young did their projections for UK economic forecast just before Christmas, and we were top over their projections for the next 3 years by some way. But we've got to share that success in two ways. First of all, telling our story. I suspect some of those slides have surprised you in terms of relative performance. We do a lousy job, historically, at telling our story. And we've also got to share that success to make sure that we do not have some who are thriving and some who are missing out on that success. And that's why the Combined Authority is thinking for the future about how we will become financially self-sufficient, how our leadership will reflect the diversity of our region, BBC covered that, and how the vibrancy of our faith communities can play a critical role in bringing the society together. There's also a critical role for advertising, to tell our story. We know we need to do that better. John Lewis did it in a superb way with our penguins and men on the moon. It's no different in regional branding, and we know we need to step into that. We also want to welcome your initiative about sharing your ideas for growth of SMEs. The idea is that that would be piloted in the West Midlands, and we are ready and welcome to do that. So last thought, as the clock says dead on naught, is quite simple. The West Midlands did lead the region, lead the world in the first industrial revolution, and in the second. We genuinely think we're limbering up to do it again in an inclusive, sustainable way. The images show the successes of Joe Chamberlain, a previous 19th century mayor of Birmingham. that took the technology of the time, gas lamps, sewerage, urban planning, and changed the lives of Brummies forever. It's our job to lead in those ways using the 21st century technology. Thank you very much for listening.
Thank you very much, Andy. We're going to be talking a little bit more about that pilot that we're talking about for the West Midlands later on. But as a fascinating example of what you can do with the power of narrative and actually getting everybody working together and in the same place. So thanks for that, Andy. And now I'd like to welcome to the stage someone who's got a lot of experience in working with obviously not only the world's biggest banks, but also with small and medium-sized businesses over the last few years. You may remember the British Business Bank was an initiative of the coalition government in 2014, precisely again with another government initiative to look at how you could actually give a turbocharge to small businesses. So I'm delighted to say that Keith Morgan, who's the Chief Executive of the British Business Bank, is with us this morning to share some of his invaluable learnings over the last few years in that role. Thank you, Keith.
Thank you, Siobhan, for that the invitation to be here. And also, just one thing to say. I mean, I completely agree with Andy that the regions are incredibly important to the success of the UK over the next, decades to come. We ourselves, as the Business Bank, have been working very closely. And in fact, one of the things that we've been working on close with Andy and his colleagues is the creation of something called the Midlands Engine Investment Fund. That's dedicated £250 million to small businesses in the Midlands area. So more of that perhaps in the conversation. The Business Bank, small businesses first. I think, at this point in time, probably there's never been a more important time for small businesses to do their piece for the country as we go into this post-Brexit environment. There are 5.7 million small businesses. They account for between 50 and 60% of the output, the private sector output of this country. They are going to be the big businesses of tomorrow. So the Business Bank is there to support those smaller businesses through finance. What is the British Business Bank? Well, you can see from here that it's an economic development bank. That means that we don't operate like other banks. We don't try to maximize our profits. We focus on the difference we make to the economy. We've been going for 3 years, just over 3 years. And the thing to note here is that we are owned exclusively by the government. So we are not in any way encouraged by private sector motives to maximize profit. We're here to work for the taxpayer. And that's how you'll see us, the British Business Bank. What have we done so far? Well, in the space of time that we've been operating, we've brought together a huge range of initiatives directing finance into small business. We currently support £4 billion going to small businesses, investments or loans. That's over 60,000 businesses. And we do that by operating through partnerships. We operate through the marketplace, making sure that we work through big banks, small banks, asset finance providers, fintech players, to get our finance to the small businesses who need it. To give you a sense of how we operate, I got this video just to share, talking to some of our partners about how we work with them. Here we go.
As a tech sector without the BBB, we just wouldn't have as many small and medium businesses funded to date.
Finance is obviously vital to the scaling of innovation. The British Business Bank is a really important part of that.
Investment from British Business Bank means that we have a commercial plant that we can showcase to our customers, and therefore we can actually sell our technology.
Passion Capital is an early-stage venture capital fund based here in London. We invest primarily in internet and digital technology businesses. British Business Make is absolutely fantastic, and one of the programs that they've had for a number of years now is the Enterprise Capital Fund. They've invested £25 million out of our £37.5 million fund. In general, we're investing really, really early on, so we're backing founders and entrepreneurs who've come up with a phenomenal idea or proposition. So for example, Adnan Ibrahim, who founded Car Throttle, which is now one of the top 5 auto sites in the world.
We were able to increase the value of the business 10 times in a year alone. So we've been able to grow a phenomenal amount using Passion Capital's money, their expertise, and also their guidance.
We're really proud to be partners with the British Business Make. There would be no Passion Capital without them, or the investments in the 40 companies that we've made since we launched.
Plastic aluminium laminates is a kind of packaging that is growing substantially. They are used in baby food pouches, pet food pouches, toothpaste tubes, coffee bags. Aluminium is a very difficult material to produce in the first place. If you manage to recycle it, you manage to reduce the amount of energy needed in order to have that aluminium in the supply chain. The Angel Co-Fund, which is part of British Business Bank, is very important. We can generate new technology, we can generate new ideas, we can develop new processes, and more British technology can be exported to the rest of the world.
Nesta is the UK's innovation foundation, and we help make sure that innovation is deployed for the public good.
From our research, we've seen that the alternative finance space is growing extremely quickly. In 2014, it's going to supply over 1 billion in finance to over 7,000 SMEs, so more than doubling year on year.
What we currently consider to be alternative sources of finance will become more and more constitutive of the mainstream. The British Business Bank will play an important role in making that happen quicker, because it's for the good of the economy and it's for the good of SMEs within it.
Shire Leasing provides asset finance solutions on business assets to UK businesses.
When you're an SME, cash flow is everything. To tie up their capital for a one-off asset is not sensible at all.
When the Business Bank agreed that they could match our private investors pound for pound, that of course has a huge impact.
It's opened up a liquidity for us to write 80 million. It means that we can compete in markets which currently we can't compete in.
One of those being agricultural and farms, and in particular the financing of cows. 250 cows being the largest we've done in one transaction so far. That's been fantastic for the farmers because that's the one area that they really were struggling.
All those SMEs that previously have not been getting lending from their banks now see funds coming through from governments to help them grow their businesses and generally increase GDP across the UK.
Now, I mean, what that shows is that we operate in many different sectors and across the country. We had Shoreditch, we had Stafford, we had Leicester, across the whole country, and we're in sectors that range from digital through manufacturing and even into agriculture. And continuing the theme of farming, I wanted to take you through a story. This is the story of Heck Foods. And Heck Foods is a premium sausage company, perhaps not your typical high-tech growth story, but something that really will power the growth of the country as well as those. What is Heck? Heck is a family-run business. Back in 2012, Andrew and Debbie Keeble decided that they would form Heck Foods. They were farmers, and I think they worked out quite quickly there was a lot more margin in premium sausages than there were in pig farming. So as a basis for that, they initiated Heck Foods, and they needed funding to do one thing, and that was to increase the awareness, the consumer awareness of what they were doing. And I'm going to tell you the story about how we worked with them. So first of all, this is how they present themselves as a small business to their marketplace.
Working for Heck's good fun, always something different.
It's a family brand as well. We're not owned by a massive company, it's just a small company. We all a young team, but we do work really hard as well. We know each other really well. It's really easy to work together.
You want a piece like it's buried underneath our whistles and peace and gold. You're so low, the bells are ringing, dinosaur, when you dig up our bones. Oh, well, like a road to protect. These are the thoughts that carry me home. Oh, no, the bells are ringing, dinosaur, when you dig up my bones. I'm a road to protect. These are the to grow. We swell and learn to grow.
Heck's different to other brands because the quality is just really high.
We use good quality pork,
Garlic, mozzarella,
red peppers,
sun-dried tomato, chicken, basil, chorizo,
gluten-free breadcrumbs.
all locally sourced as well.
Quite a lot of people are surprised when they come up because they can't find a good gluten-free sausage.
To flow. We swell and learn to go. We swim and learn to flow. We swell and learn to grow. We swim and learn to flow. We swell and learn to grow. Oh Lord, the bells are ringing. Dinosaur, we dig up my bones. I'll go to protect. These are the doors that carry me home.
Maybe they can come to you guys for some further support. But this is a company which in 2012 had £2 million of turnover, and by the most recent accounts, they're at 22 million. So in that period of time, they've not made just great sausages, but they've been one of the fastest growing companies in the country. Back in 2015, they made it to number 4 in the Sunday Times Virgin Fast Track 100. And in doing that, what they realized is to get their products into all of these outlets, they needed to invest in marketing. So the BBB, through its partner Panoramic Equity, put £1 million into Heck Foods. They used that to increase their marketing team, to attend more events, to redesign their packaging, to increase their PR activities. And the result has been tremendous growth, perhaps a good case study for the way in which the actions that you're all proposing will be important to the economy. Finally, that doesn't just happen with Heck Foods. You can trace this activity back to other sectors, to other small companies. To name just a couple more, very different, Oxford Biotherapeutics, harnessing the power of our own immune system to find cures for cancer. We're investing in that through one of our partners. We've made investments, for example, into Atom Bank, one of the up-and-coming digital banks based in the Northeast. Why is all this important? Well, the first thing is that private sector investors can be risk-averse, especially at this time when we're going through uncertainty. And the British Business Bank can increase confidence by our investments alongside them. The second thing, of course, is that great ideas need marketing to grow, and very often the work that we're doing is providing funds for new ideas, pre-profit ideas, to be commercialized. And finally, so what? Well, the so what is that if we invest in small companies, by their definition as they grow, they are high productivity. Many from the get-go design themselves to be international. We know that high productivity and exports are what we need. So by investing at this time in small companies, we can lead to greater prosperity, greater growth in jobs, and success in a post-Brexit environment. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Keith. I think we all want to be part of the Heck family from now on. They look like they have a simply marvellous time. And to complete the panel, I'd like to invite Karen Fraser from the Advertising Association, Strategy Director and Credos Director, to talk to us a bit more about the research. So, Karen, let's start with you. And by the way, please keep your questions coming. We've got about 10 minutes. Karen, talk to us about what the barriers are for small businesses and what the proposals that the AA are bringing forward are.
Sure. Well, obviously, we want to see more small businesses advertising. There are 99% of all businesses in the UK, but just 18% of all advertising spend. And the barriers that they tell us, they're often a lack of finance or a lack of confidence, a lack of know-how. And as you know, some of the ways that the Ad Association will be addressing that is through setting up hubs within the regions to help people access that type of information and finance.
So the hubs that we're talking about, it strikes me listening to Keith talking about the very businesses that you help, or marketing is a very big piece of that jigsaw, isn't it? Is there a way that we can join up with you? Because you've got a lot of experience already in this area.
Well, I'm sure actually all three of us could be quite coordinated on this front. I mean, two things I think which are similar. One is that when we go to talk to small businesses about finance, a lot of what they tell us is that they don't really know how to. They'd like to, but they don't know how to, and they'd like some help with that. You've got to remember that these people generally are, in one person you've got the CEO, the CFO, the CMO, the CTO, and the person who empties the dishwasher. So they are time poor. So they want help. The other thing that we find is that, relatively speaking, there is more demand for more input in the regions than there are in London, just in terms of spreading. There are more people currently in London and the South East who are spreading expertise, and there are fewer of them outside of that geography. So my sense is that there are things that we can do together, because we're trying to raise the awareness of the finance options, the kind of rocket fuel for growth. And if you're trying to explain the importance of advertising and marketing of that, then there's a lot of synergy.
Yeah, not only how to spend it, but how to measure the impact.
Yeah.
So that's one of the things we hear a lot. How do I measure whether this has been successful or not? I think that's one of the crucial things that we can offer.
So in the hubs that we're talking about, so the proposal is that the Advertising Association would bring together into two pilot areas of the country, one being Scotland, a discrete country, and one being the West Midlands. And what will we be offering small businesses in those areas?
Well, advice on how to advertise, and specifically how to build an integrated multimedia campaign, because we know that's going to be the most successful. We see that businesses that use agencies, they tend to do better campaigns and they tend to have better results. So that's the type of advice we'll be giving. It will be both in person and online.
Okay, and so Andy, you looking forward to embracing this in the West Midlands?
So two thoughts about what you've said. Of course it's welcome, because it will help the story that we've told. Two nudges that I'd like you to think about, though. First of all, Keith's point's absolutely right. It's got to be made really, really simple. Just telling an SME to go online and look at this, their eyes glaze over. So think about making it really practical. But the other nudge I'd give you is it's not about how to advertise, it's about what's your particular marketing story. The difference that we all know from running companies, the difference between marketing and advertising. Yes. And the most difficult thing for SMEs is often to think, how am I distinct, and therefore how do I cut through the advertising space? And that's where the advice needs to be really focused.
So focus is important. There's a few interesting questions here. So one of them is that regional SMEs might think it's difficult to gain from global opportunities, or indeed follow the lead of global creativity. So Andy, do you see a way that we can bridge that gap? Is it true, first of all?
Of course it's true. So if you look at the proportion of SMEs in the West Midlands that export, it is too low. So there is definitely a link between the marketing story and the encouraging of the exporting story, actually. But in a sense, my nudge is the answer to the question, because you've actually got to get people to really confident that what they've got is an idea that is genuinely distinct, because then the marketplace opens up.
Yeah, exactly. So we've talked a little bit about going to government to see whether we could gain government support for such industry. Obviously, they've set up the British Business Bank. In both of your experience of dealing with government, I mean, it's very hard to get money out of the government, I think we'll all agree. Got any advice for us on how we should approach this knotty problem with government?
First of all, tax breaks are difficult to win. I mean, there are some big gatekeepers on those gates, and they look for a very, very compelling argument. And I don't need to tell you that, because probably you're already having those discussions. I think that the answer probably is to present your case as a package, where it's not just a single measure of tax breaks, which is the answer, but it embraces these other issues that we've been discussing, which is the availability of advice and information. The regional aspect is terribly important to government. I mean, the big strand of the industrial strategy is all around place. So the more I think that the narrative that you have here is you know, a tax break can very easily be seen to be just somehow benefiting through more profits people who get involved in it. Yeah. I think it's got to be part of a narrative which embraces both advice, information and the regions.
It can be done. It was, someone else mentioned the film industry. That was a brilliant example of convincing then George Osborne to bring about an incredibly important tax break, and we can see the advantage that's had. So my advice would be really hard-nosed and present the business case, because that's the way you persuade people. Keith's also right, it's got to be packaged into their other pieces. And the area where there is an enormous amount of money doing good work, and you see it all on the bus stops across London today, is the advertising around the Britain is Great campaign. That's where this could lodge, and then you're going with the grain.
Thank you very much. I mean, I think that's lots of advice for us already, lots of things to think about. It's about being coordinated. It's about presenting a really strong business case, but also to the people who we're trying to influence as well. So there's loads more questions. That thing is flashing at me, so I think it's probably time for us to wrap up. I'm very much looking forward to working with you in the West Midlands, and we're going to be in Scotland as well. And you're all going to hear a lot more about this initiative, which we look forward to working on with all of you as well. Thank you very much to all our panelists.